Hello and welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. You're about to watch my video with comedian Dane Baptiste. A fantastic interview, had a really lovely time with him. I'm just recording this little intro because we recorded this on Twitch. I was just using some new software to allow me to use my iPad as the webcam because the webcam on my laptop built in is rubbish. And because I had it plugged in, apparently I should go wireless with this and it syncs up the video very nicely with the audio and everything plays in time. I had it plugged in, and that meant that my video was out of sync with my audio. Dane was completely in time, mine was out, so I can't do any clever techniques to sync that up. It wouldn't work. So you're going to have to put up with this. I'm putting this intro for uploading this onto Facebook. We do talk a bit about it in the video, but I just basically want to apologize that that happened. Apologize to Dane. He was really lovely about it. We had a really great chat. I think it's still worth listening to and watching, but that's just the way it goes. We are now at the position where video is playing smoothly, audio plays in time, and everything should go very smoothly on future videos, because I'm going to try and get it so we're streamed to both Twitch and Facebook, but I want to share this on Facebook. I wanted people on here on Facebook Live to be able to watch it as well, to get it to the biggest audience. So without further ado, here's over to the video with me out of sync with my audio on Twitch originally, now on Facebook Live. Enjoy my interview with Dane Baptiste, comedian. Hello and welcome everyone to Twitch. My sync may be slightly out from my voice, so I would just apologize for that to begin with. But welcome to the Dr. Squee Show. I'm Dr. Squee and this here is my show. Tonight, I'm going to be doing my second of my interviews from Twitch. So my guest tonight, he is the stand-up comic, writer and presenter from London. He was the first British black comedian act to be nominated for the Best Newcomer Award at the 2014 Edinburgh Comedy Awards, and followed it up with a Chortle Award win in 2015. He's had his own sitcom, Sunny D, on BBC Three, as well as making numerous TV, radio, and podcast appearances. He's also the host of his own podcast, Dane Baptiste Questions Everything, and his new stand-up show, The Chocolate Chip, is touring as soon as we're all allowed to come out to play. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Dane Baptiste. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thank you very much for such a heartfelt intro. Yeah, I really feel like I've achieved a lot with that one.
I must admit, I did have to make some notes to remember all that.
It's a lot to remember, but it's like a line of work where you have to your CV has to kind of precede you. So I have to talk about all the stuff that I did, But there's also other achievements that people don't know about. So like one time, I went to the Magic Kingdom in Disneyland, and I got to be involved in filming a scene from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and got to ride a mechanical ant. No one talks about that kind of achievement because it didn't make anybody any money. But I was proud of it.
Hey, look, any day you get to ride a mechanical ant or be involved in anything to do with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I think it's a win.
Absolutely. I mean, Rick Moranis, he was a great guy, a great actor that has never been implicated in any kind of sexual assault scandal ever. So he's always got my heart. Love the guy. Surprised it's not been remade, to be fair.
I mean, it's sad that is the bar which we aspire to. It's not to be implicated in any scandal these days.
I know it's really sad, but I always kind of prepare myself because I've been learned from being in this industry. Greatness and goodness are not fingers on the same hand. So you can be a great person, but not necessarily a good person. And every day I learn about another person that disappoints me.
And that's the kind of cheery stuff we want to start this into. So how's lockdown treating you, sir?
It's been okay. I mean, for lockdown, I guess, it's meant the demise of the performing arts industry, which on the one hand would be a terrible thing. But you know what? Everyone is going through this experience whereby people have lost loved ones, people have lost their work and stuff. So I don't really take it particularly personally. It's a shared experience. It's difficult for everyone, but clean running water, electricity, access to antibiotics, access to the internet. Like those alone already put you in the first world. So yeah, it's not been that easy, but it's the hardest part has been boredom when I think about my experience and the experience of other people in the world. So it's been alright.
Yeah, I mean it's a really weird position. I think we all find ourselves in, especially as you say in the first world. Like I lost 3 days worth of work, so I'm working 2 days a week at the moment, and I had to consider that a win versus all my friends who've lost their jobs entirely. Like that's a result now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, I just look at it like this, and even though it's rather fatalist to consider, and I want to be serious, like, I have technically lost my job, my livelihood, but at the same time, I didn't start doing it in order for it to be a job and be monetized. It was about my artistic expression. I enjoyed it, which I can still do. But, on the other hand, I guess, like I said, there are people that have lost their livelihoods and they've got families and stuff to support. But at the same time, people had jobs before, before wars break out, people have jobs as well. So they have to become soldiers. So again, as I say, this war is only against the virus, and so the temporary loss of my job is not too bad. And I know it's harder for a lot of people, but you have to weigh it up as like capitalist gain or losing your life. So
Yeah, I wish the government weighed that up maybe in the way you and I might.
yeah, but you got a government that had to wait for a footballer to tell them that you should probably feed your young children that live in poverty. So that kind of gives you an idea of what kind of government you're dealing with, in my opinion.
Yeah, wasn't the best. Wasn't the best.
It was not the best, and the thing is, it's really hard when you try and see like what was referred to as a fat cat, and when you see an overweight aristocrat trying to say to you that he don't understand why we should be feeding young children, especially when in the same breath he's one of these people that says all lives matter, doesn't sound like he cares about all lives.
Yeah, and the news today that to cheer us all up, they're going to give the Queen a boat.
I mean, we didn't even get to name the last boat. Remember that? We're supposed to be like, at least call it Boaty McBoatface, and we didn't even get those rights as citizens. And now we've given the Queen a new boat. Where is she going? Where would she go? Where is she going to go? The Queen is at an age now, she's not just going to be seasick. It's going to be like, oh, there goes her spleen. She's too old. Just let her rest. She doesn't need a boat. Or I should say, she doesn't need another boat. All the boats in the Navy start with her name. If she wants a boat, use one of those. We're in relative peace right now. No one's going to war. Give her an old Navy boat. Like, my feelings towards the royal family might be unpopular opinion. We need to treat them like spoiled trust fund kids and sit them down and be like, look, guys, we've had a good run, but we are tired of carrying you through life. Now it's time to go out there and make it for yourselves. May I suggest merchandising?
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, she should still be on lockdown. Like at her age, she should be shielding if anyone should be.
She's an immuno risk. However, I do recall Prince Philip saying in an interview that if he had a choice, he would come back as a virus. Now, I don't know if you've seen the front cover of Hello magazine recently that showed him. I think he got his wish.
He doesn't look great.
I mean, he looks great if he is a downloadable character from Mortal Kombat 11, but if he's not doing that, and if his plan is not to drink from the souls of innocent children, then he doesn't look great.
Oh, that's good then, because I believe all royals do have that codicil in their contract.
Yeah, I think it's just part of their genetic imprint. You just have to find the right incantation to bring it out of them. But he looks like the guy who gets hit by the toxic waste at the end of the RoboCop movie, the first one.
Yeah,
that's what he looks like.
Oh, that's a great call. And actually, speaking of which, that was one of your choices from the wonderful films to be buried with. And
yes, yeah.
Quite cool. Just like always, that image of the face being melted. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, it's iconic to me now, but at the time, I lost many nights of sleep as a young child. I don't know, like how I used and I got the RoboCop VHS when I first got it. Took it under the pretense that this was a piece of science fiction, which it definitely was. But I wasn't particularly familiar with Paul Verhoeven's work, that as well as using kind of like dystopian, quasi-futuristic satire, he also uses a shit ton of violence. I wasn't ready for that. ED-209, giving someone 20 seconds to comply and turning their body into a bag of meat. Oh, that was strong for my blood at the time. So strong. Yeah. But great movie, though. Great movie.
Well, because all the other films at the time were just slashes, and that was genuinely disturbing in the way it was done.
Yeah, especially because, like, when you look back at it, like, the violence might have been disturbing, but really, it's the kind of dystopia that it depicts, especially because, like, remember seeing about Detroit being a crime-ridden city, and, they were trying to redevelop it in the form of Delta City. And then when you look at forward today, when you realize, like, Detroit is in the state of Michigan and is already doing very badly, and Flint, which is also in Michigan, hasn't had clean water for, like, the last half decade. So, my God, very, very scary foreboding there, man. RoboCop was really too close to home. Like, even I'll buy that for $1. It's a great way of just, epitomizing the times we live in now of consumption, where we value capital gain over human life.
Yeah, I mean, I did love the way that you broke that all down, and you seem to have this kind of thing. It runs through your stand-up, and at the beginning of this call, when we're talking about how everything's been affected by this, there's always context to everything you put into your work. Is that something you're very mindful of?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think especially now we live in a time where discourse has been very, very perverted, and it's been, definitely the description of it has been misled. Where if these fires of division have been stoked by companies like Cambridge Analytica or Russian cyber soldiers, but essentially it's very hard for you to make any kind of statement for that to remain innocuous, because you have the democratization of social media, which means anybody can say something. So I always try to give context to the things I say and make sure they make sense. Doesn't mean I'm immune to any kind of trolling or any kind of rebuttal from people online, but at least I know, I never just say things for the sake of saying them, or just it come from any kind of emotional place, because I'm always trying to discuss things in like a legal fashion, because it's very hard, because morality is such a subjective thing. So I always try and talk about the crime rather than the criminal, and always try and give context in all of my arguments.
Yeah, I mean, I would, of course, point everyone towards Brett Goldstein's wonderful podcast to listen to everything that you said there. But just to touch on it very briefly, it was the breakdown you gave, which just I will kind of not wear my privilege on my sleeve, but point out I'm very aware of my privilege, kind of like that I didn't think of movies in the context you probably have to, but also I think not everyone kind of breaks it down the way you do.
Oh, of course not. And I mean, I can tell you as well, and for those that don't know, it's just basically I'd made a statement on another podcast where I was like, Forrest Gump, which is a classic, is a film I'm very cynical about, because the Forrest Gump story is actually the story of African Americans and their journey in the United States. And so anyone who wants to research that insane theory, just consider that Forrest Gump's life begins with him being raised by a single mother in the South, where he's bullied and vilified because he looks and speaks different to everybody else, and doesn't really endear himself to people in the South until he proves his athletic prowess and his ability to run very fast and catch a football, which then leads to him getting a scholarship to university, which is already sounding kind of black. And then he has a scene where he is teaching Elvis how to dance and giving him his dance moves, which editors has always conceded that he got all of his influence from African Americans. And then you see Forrest Gump going the Million Man March and giving an address on Capitol Hill. Then he's hanging out with the Black Panthers. Then he spends half the film running around after a white woman who doesn't know what she wants. So it just gets blacker and blacker as the show goes on. And then even the tagline is like, life is like a box of chocolates. And there is no better way to describe the African diaspora. We are varying in complexions and various shades of brown, and some of us have softer exteriors than others. But even though some of us may have hard exteriors, some of us are soft on the inside. Some of us are, unfortunately, coconuts, and those get left with the rest of us are having our celebrations. And some of us are plain nuts. By the end of the day, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, but chocolates are always nice. So it was basically me just that small commentary was on the fact that I am very much a film buff, but I have more recent times, maybe over the last decade or so, become very, very aware of how much the media plays a role in audiences' perceptions regarding particularly African Americans, especially if they live in parts of the world where their only experience of African Americans is on celluloid.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm always very open to, if something's pointed out the flaws in it, and kind of if something was perceived to us to be okay and it's pointed out to us it's not, then it has to go, and that's fine. But damn, did you have to ruin Teen Wolf? The rest of them I was good with, but listen,
I loved all these. How do you think I feel? I love these programs. I love them so much. So imagine how I feel when I realize what they're doing here, because it's kind of it wouldn't be that much of a problem if there were other existing formats and aesthetics that complemented the existence of these things. But it's just it's just a weird thing that there's so much allegory kind of used, but people aren't prepared to see the actual thing. But yeah, I used to love Teen Wolf as well. You think Teen Wolf's crazy because he makes everyone like him when he plays basketball? Have you seen Teen Wolf 2? He becomes a fucking boxer. He becomes a boxer for everyone to like him. That's African American to a T. You're an outsider until you can form your athletic prowess, so you're good at sports. Then everyone's like, actually, he's okay. And even the fact that he makes a transition where he goes from being with Biff, because she resembles him, same olive skin and dark hair. He's like, nah, I'm rich and famous. I'm gonna end up with a blonde woman. That's what Kanye West said in Gold Digger.
In all fairness, he was a bitch. He was an asshole to Boo from the beginning.
Well, typically a lot of African American men in positions of power do turn around and they do the same thing to African American women. So, yeah, again, the story is still allegorically quite similar.
Yeah, no, it was a kind of very kind of thoughtful breakdown on a trifling movie such as Teen Wolf and Teen Wolf 2 especially.
Mate, I was sad too, man. You think that it's like even when I look back at like 80s film cartoons, the stuff I used to love, I'm like, why are every one of my favorite protagonists like Hitler's wet dreams? He-Man is Aryan. He's from fucking Edenia. Like Captain America is Aryan. He looks more like Captain Germany. And then like others like everyone, Matt Tracker from Mask. Remember that cartoon? That was amazing when the car turned into like battle vehicles and stuff. He's super blonde. I'm like, why is everybody I look up to, with the exception of maybe Brave Star, like a super Aryan? So it's just like, it's very hard for you to have the same nostalgia because you don't see yourself in these kind of images.
Yeah, and for people watching who maybe didn't catch the beginning, the reason why I might laugh, like when Dane is making a really good serious point, or I'm doing a phony face when he's being funny, the sync is out. It's not just me being an asshole. That's by the by.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you could choose to be assholes, but it's like, yeah, I guess I got to. Do you know what? It was Transformers that started all of this. If you want to blame somebody, you blame Michael Bay. He is the person that allowed me to start becoming so cynical about the American film industry. Because if you look at all of Michael Bay's films like Independence Day and Pearl Harbor and Transformers and what's the other big budget thing he did?
Oh,
something explosions. Well, the point is, when you watch any one of his epics, you're going to walk away from those and think to yourself, oh, how did they save the day again? Oh, yeah, nuclear warhead. So then you start thinking, do you know what? If we're going to have to deal with extraterrestrial threats at some point in the form of aliens/transformer, then maybe a nuclear weapon would be very useful. So then when you go back to function as a part of American society and people are like, we should cut defense budgets, your head is so twisted. You're like, but what if aliens attack? And this is how Americans actually think.
Yeah. I mean, for me as well, it's the fact that, like, I know this is a really bizarre thing to have like opened my eyes to this, but I used to write like Doctor Who fan fiction stuff. If you ever have to save the day with a sonic screwdriver and you remove guns and weapons, you suddenly realize how pervasive they are used in shows.
Yeah, oh god, it's especially in America, it's just absolutely gun fest. Even in things that you wouldn't think need that much relevance to guns. Like, how do they have that many guns in Romeo and Juliet?
Yeah. And it's just suddenly like when you see any media which doesn't use guns as the easy way out, though, like you see how creative people can get and how they have to be more creative.
Absolutely. I mean, if you could, that is epitomized by the fact that the comic book adaptation industry now has become one of the biggest and most lucrative ones, and it's all about people that are able to exact their social justice or vigilantism without the use of firearms. So that's kind of proven that. I think that's always a part of human beings esoterically, that we do want people to be able to defend themselves and have physical prowess themselves without the use of a weapon. But I guess when you have an entire economy that's kind of built around it, you kind of have to encourage it, I suppose, because that's essentially because that's what I mean. It's like as you get older and you start seeing policies of America, it's almost like now the fiction is stranger than fact. So like I love watching a movie like John Wick, amazing film, but then I'm like, it's kind of glorifying guns.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I do still massively enjoy this, and he's a good protagonist, but at the same time I'm like, they're still making it too okay to have guns. And I do kind of worry about that, because I just think if you have a population when 1/3 of the people are obese, like they're going to shoot before they walk.
Yeah.
And, I really think like America could maybe solve its gun control problem by having what I refer to as crumb control, where if you have a body mass index of over 27, you're not allowed to hold a firearm, because a person that would be in shape would go downstairs and find out what the noise is, whereas a fat motherfucker would just shoot down there and sit in and then walk down afterwards. So
they're just shooting through the floorboards.
Yeah, they'll just shoot because they can't be like, if something was over the fence, or they're like, it's like, I can either walk over there, but because I'm fat, I'm lazy, so I'll just shoot. Also, I'm hopped off of a fructose. Like, we know that police officers enjoy donuts. Why do you think they're so fucking crazy?
Oh God, yeah. Like I was, that did make me think like all these kind of brutal scenes you see of police brutality. They're always fat fuckers.
They're always overweight. They'd rather shoot rather than run. Plus the fact that, if you play sports, doctor, and you perform in that sport in a way that people consider your results to be quite dubious, they will test your blood and your urine to see if you cheated. But if you kill a human being, we don't know what drugs you're taking. Now, I am no advocate for law enforcement, but if you look at the plight of a typical beat officer's job, your hours are going to be crazy, which means you're going to have insomnia, right? Plus, you are in danger on the streets because you are dealing with criminals, right? Criminals are going to run from you, and in many cases, they're going to aggress you in order to. And some people do resist arrest. So if you're an officer, you're not on like the same kind of nutritional or physical development plan as like an athlete. So the odds are you're probably going to be taking steroids so you can keep up with your enemies. Odds are you're probably some kind of medication because you need to get sleep after a hard shift, especially if you're working homicide and you see shit that'll keep normal people up at night. You're probably taking those too. Not only that, just the rigors of being a cop, running after people, fighting people resisting arrest, maybe being hit by bullets, running and jumping over fences. You probably need to take some form of opioid or painkiller just to get you through your day. Now, this is not just like for police officers. Like you could be like a paramedic and still require this kind of stuff. You could be like a GP and still require all this kind of medication. The only thing is, like we are aware that like opioids and steroids, plus sleeping tablets all have different side effects, but we don't even check officers' urine when they do something. Like if you haven't had sleep and you're scared on the streets and you got a gun and you're having roid rage or you're having side effects from not being able to sleep, and then you do see a six-pack, you're going to go crazy. You don't know what you're doing, but it's like, why don't we ever test them? There's no psycho analysis of these people. I just think it's fucking mental that if I jump over a high jump bar, you want to test my urine. But if I kill somebody, you're like, it's just a job, mate. If you drop a burger in McDonald's and someone sees you, you'll be fired. If you drop a human body, that's okay. That's weird.
Yeah, and it's also kind of like works in the flies in the face of what always comes out afterwards of like, oh, this person who shot down wasn't a saint. Well, let's look at the officer and what kind of like what they might have been on.
Well, I mean, given the fact that like 2 to 4, you're 4 times more likely to be a victim of domestic violence if you live with a police officer. Like, and also this whole thing about he wasn't a saint, so blah blah blah. Like, it flies in the face of all of our fucking social moral standards. If that is the issue, then why is Harvey Weinstein still alive? Why is Brock Turner still alive? Like, Charles Manson died peacefully in prison and he got people to stab a pregnant woman. So this whole thing about like, he was a bad person and blah, 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 blah. Like, fucking, well, you know who's been arrested? Lindsay Lohan. Am I going to go put a bullet in her fucking head? No. You know who else have been arrested? Winona Ryder. I'm not going to go into the set of Stranger Things with a sawn-off shotgun and be like, you deserve this, bitch, because she, had a car accident. She's been done. So this whole idea that like, oh, that person wasn't a saint. Yeah. So what is this karma? Like, if you think like being party to a violent crime or abuse justifies you being killed, what do you think is going to happen to you and everyone like you when you've aided and abetted all of this murder that's taking place, like, of innocent people in America? Like, what people don't understand is that there's so far ahead now whereby whether or not you care about black people, you consider them to be human beings or animals, the idea of you murdering an animal that has not aggressed you, by all psychiatrists say that is an indication that you may be a psychopath. If you kill, torture, or maim small animals, they say that's how people know you're a psychopath and you might be a serial killer. You look at the pathology of all serial killers, that's how they all start out. Now, prior to Civil Rights Act legislation, people in the South would have been killing black people with no fear of reprisal for years, which means they have normalized the idea of murdering innocent people. They've been able to go back to their families, continue to have kids, be amongst their family, and no one has checked them about their psychological disposition. Now, any psychiatrist will tell you this stuff can always be passed on genetically, which means from 400 years plus, you've had people that have been incubating, nurturing, and enabling psychotic murderers for years. Like, it's like even that guy, Brock Turner, like, he was caught raping a woman behind a dumpster. Because he has money, he beat the case, he got to go home after 2 months. Now, the issue is not just about the judicial system that has allowed this man to walk free. If you go to the same university as this guy, and you're on the same varsity swimming team as this guy, how are you going to be normal sitting there with somebody rapes people? Like, that's insane. Like, you can't, it doesn't matter if you hate people. Like, soldiers go to Vietnam, and they murder people too, and they get PTSD when they come back, and they take their own lives. So, if soldiers who are trained to murder, the guilt of killing someone makes them take their own lives, one has to ask themselves, what is wrong with these people, these police officers, that they kill people without batting an eyelid? That's not normal, irrespective of race. It's just not normal.
Yeah, I mean, and like the whole idea that even if you like get past all that, which are just cogent, just great points, like suddenly this police officer, like when George Floyd is past about 20, suddenly has all this information. Just he doesn't know any of this, even if that made any sense in the
If
first place.
even if people, but if you saw the video, if people were screaming at him, "Why are you doing this?" He could have said, "Then this guy is a rapist." He didn't say a word. He did not say a word because he knows what he was doing was wrong. This is a thing. Another thing, when people know if they do what they're doing is righteous, if you challenge them, they will stand their ground on it. He didn't say anything. The police have had weeks in order to prove all this stuff, and now all these accusations they prove to be a hoax. Now, as I say, if that is the energy, right? Where were all these people with Jeffrey Epstein was arrested? There was no one saying all lives matter. There was no one doing any counter protests. And this is a man that is actively trafficking underage white women. So, and I have to say that because the context is that a lot of the things you see, where it's the Tulsa riots, the youngest person to ever be executed by electric chair was 14 years old, issued whole Emmett Till, like all of these things are preceded by these false accusations of white women being raped. So I'm just saying, Brock Turner actually raped somebody, and there's proof. There are no protests at his campus at university.
Yep.
There are no protests at his varsity his swimming team. Like, there were no protests for Jeffrey Epstein. There's been no one insisting on finding out who he's associated with. Like, these questions aren't asked. And it's like, one has to ask themselves, even if you're a white woman, do you really think the people that organized and orchestrated the Salem witch trials really care about you?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like, and the concentration seems to go on. And I'm not saying this isn't a fine place for it to go, but what's your feeling on the reaction to look at our art from history? Like, like Faulty Towers obviously hit the news, which was a bit of something.
Yeah.
It got taken down to put a warning on it. That was it. But how do you feel about kind of like going over our art from the past?
I don't really see the point of going over art from the past, because it's from the past. And at the time, if it was created and it was able to fly, that's more representative of the society that it was made in rather than the art itself. Because, in many cases, taking into account like Little Britain, for example, it's art imitating life. We'd be naive to not suggest that the reason why it did well is because people don't share the same sentiments and they identify with those caricatures, if nothing else. For what I feel like is that the issue isn't really about some of these more offensive aesthetics that have existed before. It's the lack of opportunity for any kind of counter aesthetics or any counterculture to appear in mainstream media. So, there are certain parts of Little Britain that I liked, but for me, I guess the problem is that it doesn't really reflect all of Britain. Like I did Sunny D, and I was a first-time writer, and it's the first sitcom on the BBC in over 2 decades, which means an entire generation has gone without anything representative of their journey. And that's not how art's supposed to work. Like, if you had to tell you, like, you remember what songs and what albums, allow you to ponder and reflect upon your like teens, your 20s, your 30s, so you have an entire group of black people who would have been tax-paying towards like, the BBC, who had nothing to represent them at all. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, it's just the same slap in the face as me having to pay tax to look after the police, even though they victimized me and I pay their salaries. It's the same with the BBC. Like, I'm paying for that and I'm not having any kind of representation. So why would any black or brown person pay a license fee?
Yeah, certainly. And that gets back to gets to the kind of like the issue where people say, oh, I'm on your side until you start rioting or looting, and then I'm against it. But it's the social contract which gets broken of like, you're paying into something, you're told that you'll be able to afford and be able to buy these things like everyone else, and you're not given any opportunity to get there.
Well, exactly. And also, but even then, the thing about looting, that it's always a part of this whole subversive thing of like people still trying to quell or, align themselves with like an oppressor. Because when America became independent from, when England became independent, when America became independent from the United Kingdom, they weren't like, please, can we please leave and let's have our own independent sovereign nation? No, they had a demonstration with the Boston Tea Party. And then there was an independence war. So Americans more than anybody know that sometimes you have to use rather drastic and potentially violent means in order to assert your freedom. So, normally, like, for example, when it comes to animals, they normally attack you if you're threatening their children. And that's the same thing that's happening on the future of African-American children everywhere. It's threatened by ongoing systematic racism. So, yeah, people are going to be violent and they're going to loot. And it's like, if you really have a problem with looting, why don't you return these people and their money or return their money back? If you were to, it's one of the two things. It's like, it's either you return all the money that you've earned from chattel slavery or you shut the fuck up. Because what I found, what we've all found out recently as well, is that for all of this talk about how, reparations don't really make any sense, you've basically got, it transpires that we've been paying a restitution and compensation to former slave owners' families up until 2015 in the UK alone. So it's like, it looks like reparations are absolutely fucking fine. And also, if you can get personal injury claims where you get paid for being injured at work, I feel like every single descendant of slaves is entitled to that kind of money as well.
Yeah, totally. Look, to get back to your work though, sir, you mentioned Sunny D there.
Yes.
When you're making something which, like you're saying, hasn't been made for certainly a very long time, what did you want to put into that show? What like, and plus it's your first kind of show out the gate. Kind of what felt important to get in there?
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing for me was that I've always been a fan of sitcoms, particularly like a lot of adult animation, which is very clear if you look at the aesthetic of Sunny D. Like a lot of it's very surreal and it's very embellished and very high color. So yeah, I had a big influence from like Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, and like Duckman and The Critic and South Park, as well as even the Wachowski siblings and like The Matrix and stuff, and all of the high color they made with like The Matrix and Speed Racer. So yeah, I just wanted to create something as a sitcom fan. I just wanted to make something that other sitcom fans would enjoy, and I just wanted to be respectful to them and not condescending. So no laughter track and no really contrived ways of entering or leaving the stage. And yeah, just trying to do something new, but also contribute to that subgenre of entertainment and make sure that I did something that people would enjoy. So yeah, a lot of it was just being reciprocal to ideas and trying to be as pragmatic as possible. And I was just realistic about the possibility of, if it's not made again, or if I don't get this chance again, I still want this to represent me and just give it the most effort possible. So, Sunny D, in some ways, I wanted it to create something with a narrative that remained ambivalent at the end. So there's a lot of possibilities, but at the same time, it's still a well-rounded story and a piece of a creation that people can still enjoy and has a certain level of timelessness to it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it seems, looking at your work, and like your stand-up seems like more than of a performance than some stand-up. Some stand-up seems more on the level stand-up. There's kind of like acting within your stand-up, it feels like. I don't know if that's kind of a fair thing to say. Like, and you mentioned a lot of sitcoms were your influences. Was that something you were very kind of aware of when you're doing your stand-up?
Yeah, somewhat so. Like, I think I got very much into sketch comedy before I got into stand-up comedy, just because of the rate at which I consumed it when I was a kid. Like, there was a lot more like Cannon and Ball and Hale and Pace, French and Saunders, The Real McCoy. So probably taking a lot more sketch comedy, in Living Color in the States and stuff as well. Before I probably became a lot more aware of stand-up comedy as a teenager. When I first saw a live show with Russell Peters, D.L. Hughley, and Leo Muhammad, and then listened to Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker. And so I think that's what cemented the whole stand-up thing for me. But yeah, because I was so heavily influenced by sitcoms initially, I always wanted to have that discipline whereby I could articulate a point and then act it out to kind of demonstrate it. And that sensibility was something I wanted to carry over to like Sunny D, where there'd be some form of like breaking the fourth wall in a narration, and then be able to jump cut to like a very surreal precinct and a very surreal plane where we can demonstrate that point as well, but as funny as embellished as possible. So I just wanted, Sunny D is kind of like taking a walk inside my head, but with a fully immersive experience.
Yeah, I do kind of love these sitcoms which do use the modern style, but kind of like kind of have respect for the format. I'm a big lover of sitcom. Like we've been recently watching, me and my fiance, all the episodes of Cheers. And I was like, obviously there's so much dated in it, but like there's definitely a format there, and there's definitely kind of like ideas which influence sitcoms to this day.
Oh, absolutely. And the best sitcoms are always the ones where it's taking the real banality of life and been able to add so much richness in terms of dialogue and interaction with the characters. And I think that's what relativity is always what works out for most people. So with Sunny D, it was kind of like, I know that despite the fact that there hadn't been a Black British sitcom on TV for such a long time, the endeavor wasn't to create a Black sitcom, it was to create a sitcom which incidentally has Black people in it because it's about my family. And I just felt like if, the BBC can show The Fresh Prince for like 6 seasons, there's no reason why this won't work. And yeah, it's really about the fact that it has that whole fantasist kind of styling, because irrespective of your age, your race, or your gender or sexual orientation, we all dream and we all daydream. And so that's what Sunny D was kind of tapping into.
Yeah, it's. I think there's something about kind of having that specificity, but kind of like having enough generality that everyone can get it. Like everyone's everyone can get what's in that show.
Exactly. And also it's one of these things whereby, as I said, being aware that we now live in an era of digital streaming and digital platforms, it means that there's so much more layers you can add to an aesthetic, because now you have the prevalence of like Easter eggs and crossovers and, visual references to previous things. And, we have people are a lot more open to like anthologies because of box sets and sequels in like film and cinema. So yeah, anything I couldn't necessarily convey in script, I'll try and do with soundscaping or try and do with just like the design of like sets and the like and stuff as well, because as I said, it's like I want it to be accessible, but there are a few Easter eggs in Sunny D whereby watching it again and returning to it, those who are in the know will recognize certain icons and certain Easter eggs.
And is Sunny D available anywhere at the moment?
Yeah, it's currently on the BBC iPlayer. So with all the furor that's going on right now, I was like, if I really cared about Black lads, I'd probably be putting on their first sitcom in 20 years. And somebody must have told them. So yeah, it's back available on the BBC iPlayer. So if listeners and watchers here have got a spare 90 minutes, then you can watch the whole of the first season. If you really enjoy it, then you tweet the BBC and tell them make me some more, because it don't cost that much. Trust me, it's BBC budget.
I think all you were missing at the end of that was a thumbs up to the camera. There you go, sir. Just to kind of fully do the plugs as well, your special from the BBC is also up on Netflix at the moment. We were watching back the other night to kind of prepare for this. Amazing special, by the way.
Thank you very much.
But again, it's that whole thing of kind of like you talked about experiences, some which I had no clue about, some stuff I haven't experienced. But there was so much which kind of was general and universal. It was absolutely beautiful work, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, man. It's a pleasure. One of my first specials. And not to toot my own horn, I would really, if those of you who are interested in watching it on Netflix, it's live at the BBC, please look out for the capturing Osama bin Laden bit at the end, because I'm going to try and expand on that whole thing with a sketch. So it'd be good if people got the background beforehand.
Yeah, there's something which I really like about when comedians do that. I was watching something from Phil Jupiter's the other night, and he did a routine. It's something from him from recent years when he was on Live at Apollo.
Mm-hmm.
It was a routine which I first heard him doing on his VHS, which they did, which was like one of the last specials not to go onto DVD as well. And he was still doing it today, but he'd added this whole second chunk. Do you do a lot of like that revisiting of your work in that way?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it could become very complacent if you feel like all your jokes are perfect. So yeah, I do try to look back and in the same way that I guess musicians can return to their music and change arrangements and drum patterns and try and make it a bit better, I do try to go back to previous material. I believe, like, especially looking at it with more experienced eyes, I'm able to deliver some jokes a bit better than I used to, act out some stuff a bit better, and just revise over nomenclature and stuff like that, because you don't want to be like, oh, you guys don't like being called that anymore? My mistake. So yeah, I just think it's a whole part of remaining current and relevant as a performing artist to like go back and look over your material. But I do tend to try. I think the way to kind of circumvent having to update material is to always focus on try and look past the surface in terms of your observations. So the more you can scratch the surface and transcend the physical, the more likely you're going to be able to reach people on that same level as well.
I'm wondering, like what you were saying before about you believe that art should be a reflection of the time it was in, so it's like okay to keep art up even if it's not perfect by today's standards. Do you give yourself the same freedom when you look back and you see something of your own work and you go, that's not how I think anymore?
Yeah, I think I try to give myself the same freedom, but at the same time, it's like I've never really tried to have any kind of discriminatory platitudes toward anybody else. But if I'm challenged on any kind of the terms or any kind of phrases that I use that are now seen as derogatory, like I don't have the precious ego whereby I'll be like, well, that's what I said back then and blah blah blah. So I'm open to it, and if someone does provide context and give me a sound reason as to why it doesn't work, then I'm always happy to review stuff, because my endeavor isn't to just say what the hell I want or to shock people. Is that I want to make good jokes which are based on very accurate observations, and then at the same time be able to, as I said, always endeavor to try and look at a phenomena with my mind's eye rather than be like, I've seen this and relate back. Because I think, as I said, if you're able to ponder everything from consciousness, that will give your material that timelessness and that more broader appeal that people enjoy. So I always say I'm always trying to capture people's mind state. Is that mindset with that second after they wake up or that second before they go to sleep? Is that small window of human consciousness where you don't think about your existence along the lines of you being a man or a straight man or a cisgender man or a black man or a white man. It's just consciousness before you go to sleep and just before you wake up, and then you start learning to how to conform within a society and a reality you're in. This is, if I can get people in that one quantum there, that's the best place to convey art to people, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I find people are more open like that. It's you know, even if, like, you know, none of us are perfect. We're all gonna always find stuff in our previous work that just like now we probably wouldn't say that way, we wouldn't do that way. And the people are more open. They usually deliver that art a bit more freely as well. So like when the way you deliver stuff seems to be more open to like I could be wrong on this, you know, in a few years' time I might be wrong on this, and that's fucking okay, you know, that's all right.
I know, but you know, I could be wrong on it too. But the thing is, it's about leaving yourself open to it. I think art is supposed to remain dynamic, and you know, sometimes when I'm musing about things that I see, I'm also learning as well. So my initial ideas can be incorrect, but yeah, I try to keep things fluid, and I'm never too rigid about stuff. So you know, I can, as long as I can make a good joke and keep it unique. Then if I'm making a joke about a stupid joke I made before, I'm happy to do that as well. And I think I've done that before previously, actually. I've flippantly made a joke that I felt was a bit rude and then used that to get into something with a bit more, a bit less offensive, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And so when you were kind of like starting as a stand-up, for you, did there seem to be a roadmap out there? Was there like a route you wanted to follow, or did you just start doing it and just go from there?
Yeah, I started doing it. Like, so far as the research, like, I guess once I started getting into comedy, I think we all research/procrastinate. And my whole thing was like, let me look at some of the people I idolize in comedy, I look at their journeys, or look at people I see being successful in their journeys. And I think the first commonality I found between them is that most of the guys had studied at some form of theatre or performing school, done some kind of course. So I was like, the first thing I've done, I've been winging it previously, but now I'm going to do comedy in earnest. I need to learn my stagecraft and how to write efficiently and creatively. So I did a few courses there. And then, yeah, I remember 2011, I did a showcase at the end of like a comedy course, and then started getting into open mic. And yeah, it was very different to what I imagined it would be. And comedy is a very hard art form and lifestyle for people to understand, and it's very early stages. So I guess, yeah, I just got into it, just wanted to be able to work as often as possible. And then, yeah, initially my primary goal was I just need to have enough money so that my mother doesn't think I'm a complete loser. So that was the main thing, just being able to afford to be able to travel, be able to afford to feed myself while I am traveling. And that was my initial goal in comedy.
And your goal was to not look like a loser in front of your mum, and you chose stand-up comedy. That's like, you've made things harder on yourself just from the get-go.
Right. If you can't laugh at yourself, doctor, then you're not going to go very far in this business. So I was very calm with the idea. My life is a joke. I'm 30. I have no kids. I live with my mum. I'm briggity broke. So, you know, what else is there? Come on, you can't take this shit too seriously. So yeah, it was cool. And yeah, just to let you know how that's going, when lockdown began, I called my mum and I was like, hey mum. She was like, how you doing? I'm good. I'm just going to Tesco's. And she was like, oh, for a job? So yeah, that's I've been on Live in Apollo twice, doctor. Twice.
And like, so were you 30 when you started doing professional?
Well, not the first time. So my initial foray into stand-up was about 2006, and I just kind of winged it and did a few gigs here and there. Then I kind of, after dipping my toe, went back to normal work and stuff to figure out how I was really going to do it, if at all. And then, yeah, it was about just shy of 10 years ago, which I'm not 40 now, but yeah, just shy of 10 years ago, I started doing comedy properly. So I kind of turned 30 in a weird like limbo between half-assing it and actually doing stand-up.
Yeah, and it seemed to be quite a quick progression, but was it in real life? Like, you know, the Edinburgh Award was fairly early on?
Yeah, it was fairly early on, I guess, about 3 years into my career. But I don't know, man, about the whole time thing, because it's a marathon, not a race, and some things you may achieve some milestones at some point and some at a different point. So it's very hard to try and look at your success in comedy in a linear fashion, because the trajectory is never like in a linear or like ascending fashion. It's all over the place. And so I guess I would say when it comes to like the achievements I've had, never on schedule, but always on time. So.
And how was the first Edinburgh? Was that your first Edinburgh, or had you gone previously?
I'd gone previously, so I'd probably been 3 times previously. The first time I went to Edinburgh was just to check the lay of the land, and then managed to pick up a gig at the BBC at the Potter Road tent, which was so fun and exciting. I turned up 12 hours early for it. Yeah. And then the second time, I was doing the Amuse Moose final. I hadn't planned on going, had the Amuse Moose final, and that was fun because I had tendonitis and I had to walk with a crutch. So I don't know if you've been to Edinburgh, but it's hills and cobblestones. It is not crutch friendly. And then the third time I went, I was doing Bound and Gags Big Value show, or just a tonic in the caves, and that was a fun showcase. And then I was approached to do my debut show at the end of that. Oh, and that's when I got my first TV appearance. I was performing at the showcase, and then I got approached by BBC Three to do my first TV appearance on Sean Walsh's Comedy Spectacular. And then 2014 was the debut show, and the rest is the present.
And when you get the the award, was it something? Did you think that was kind of like a particularly special show for you, or did it come as a surprise?
I didn't even know it existed until I got to Edinburgh,
Right.
and it was a nice surprise. I didn't find out about the whole first Black British nominee until after the nomination, so it wasn't like it was something I was going for. I really, because given the story that I'd heard about Edinburgh, I just wanted to make enough money so that I wouldn't be broke, and then and then I just have people turn up to my show. So yeah, that was my main goals. I didn't really think about any kind of plaudits or awards. I just wanted to have a show that people turned up to, and I just didn't want to just lose a shitload of money. And fortuitously, it was sold out run and I got nominated. But yeah, I was still brassic when I got back there, so that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insane thing, Edinburgh, where people can go thousands in debt just on the promise that if they're one of the few lucky ones, it might pay off in the long run in their career.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to bank on. And for me, it was like I was able to take that gamble because I was like, I have nothing to lose and I can't afford to do anything other than succeed at this. So it was a good impetus for me. I don't really spend as much as some people did, but it definitely wasn't cheap. And I say I was broke at the end, like because by having the nomination and opening up to new commercial opportunities, that's how you earn that money back over the course of a year. So I never went broke, but 28 days for invoices to get paid. So I did sell in Edinburgh. When I got back, I was broke because you have to wait 28 days for anything to clear and for your earnings and your net earnings to come through. And also, so I had to ask my sister for money to get a haircut because I was so poor. But I just really had some very basic goals in Edinburgh. And in comedy, like I try to keep them equally humble in that, like my greatest goal in comedy is to do a good job and be able to travel and take care of my family, and be well regarded by my peers. And I feel like once you keep that stuff there, everything else is just a bonus.
I just think any comedian who isn't already established, who goes up to Edinburgh and spends all that money, like with no guarantee of these returns, I think you have stones and wheelbarrows, sir.
Absolutely. But for me, it was like this has to go or I can't go home. And I think if I ever got to a point where something like Edinburgh stopped being lucrative, then I'd give it a break. I mean, 6 years ago when I first started going to Edinburgh, then it was seen as being like this trade fair and kind of this exhibit for you to open yourself up to new opportunities. But now, we live in a digital era where you can transcend all of these gatekeepers and you can attract your own audience and you can effectively market and target people that enjoy your stuff, rather than you going to Edinburgh and speculating that maybe you'll be appreciated by the British comedy bourgeoisie. So
yeah, no, it's great. And like another thing which you've done, which is like it seems like the equivalent to other kind of, I used the term roadmap earlier, but like Live at the Apollo seems like a big step as well for a comedian these days.
I mean, historically, I think Live at the Apollo is almost some form of like a kingmaker in that if you were on Live at the Apollo, you were a certified live performing comedian and your tour would sell out almost instantaneously. I think over the years, that level of influence has waned significantly. But that is not to say that it's still not an amazing experience and it's still not like a great comedy milestone. But I think you should never put your eggs in one basket. And even Live at the Apollo is an amazing experience. But for those who may be aspiring to become involved in comedy, like never forget that what you want to do is be able to go on stage, say funny stuff, make people laugh, and then if you're really lucky, someone pays you for that shit. And you shouldn't lose sight of that.
And Paul McCaffrey, when he was on the show, he said that you get to pick your own entry music. What did you choose for? You said you were on there twice.
Okay, so the first time I chose "We're Gonna Be Alright" by Kendrick Lamar, and then the second time I think it was "Three Wheel Ups" by Kano. But it was a nightmare because I picked so many songs, and they were like, "We can't play that one, can't play that one." I was like, "Are you serious?" So after a lot of back and forth, so the first time was "We're Gonna Be Alright" by Kendrick Lamar. And then the second one was, Three Wheel Ups by Kano.
Yeah, it just makes me think of the old Bill Hicks bit that it's like he plays Enter the Sandman as he's coming on. He goes, look, that doesn't enter into the show at all. I just have a shit stereo at home, so I really wanted to hear that.
Yeah. I might go back to it, man. But yeah, who doesn't want to open like Bill Hicks? But yeah, We Gonna Be Alright for me was, yeah, the significance of that song was to let people know that, like, once again, I guess it's opening the door to a new opportunities and more diverse and inclusive opportunities for comedy performers. So I was letting everyone know, as the first Black British nominee, we're going to be okay. I won't let you guys down.
Oh, that's a very nice message, sir. And I did love the stand which London Hughes has taken recently. She was talking about the news quiz and how she won't go on that. She loves it. She loves the presenter, but like until she's not the only Black person involved in the production, it just it's just it's to think that that's kind of even needs to be said now.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I think, yeah, as I said, the issue isn't these more vacuous examples of discrimination or racial ignorance. The issue has always been an institutional one, whereby the opportunities are not there for Black or Brown, Asians to give an account of themselves, and to begin opening up for that discourse. Like, I genuinely believe one of the largest problems with, like, racial tensions in this country is that, this is a predominantly white country where there are some people from satellite towns, villages, and hamlets who have seldom that much experience around other Black people outside of when they see them on sports. And what we don't want is every single time Black people to appear in these very natural spectrum, narrow spectrums for discussion, which are just race, sports, and racism in sports. Because obviously, then even other white people will associate a certain level of belligerence or resentment every time they see a Black person on the TV. And I would much rather it be like, if they had allowed for Black people to have their appearance on TV in arts in the same way they do with sports, then people would be a lot more au fait with like Black British culture, and it wouldn't just be such a shock. Because if you were a white person living in like a hamlet or in like bumfuck nowhere upon Tweed, every time you see a Black person on television, you're like, why are they so angry? Whereas if they were able to see Black people in the incarnations of in a sitcom or like performing stand up, at least they get a whole range in terms of like aesthetics, and they get a range, and so it's not this whole homogenized narrative of Black people like, I fucking hate this country, I'm just trying to play football and people are throwing bananas and you're racist and you're racist and you're racist. Because then people are like, but I'm not racist, I don't want any trouble. But most people are not that confrontational, so they'll be less inclined to engage you. Whereas if we can discuss stuff in a funny way, because that's what we say in England, we have maxims like, well, you got to laugh, didn't you? Otherwise you'll cry. Like, if we're given these platforms to discuss very taboo or tense subjects in the way that we have learned via comedy, then that would be very beneficial to ease in, this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Bubblefuck Nowhere. I came from Romsey, which is a small market town, which kind of like placed right into that. And like the only experience I had of Black people growing up was like basically Lenny Henry and a few other kind of like comedians who come on TV. And like that was a great first experience of the world, which I wasn't seeing around me. Like, it was just like, oh, this guy just tells jokes, he's cool. It's like, that's good, I'm glad I had that as my experience. Whereas others had like less, they didn't have such good experiences of seeing.
Some people wouldn't have had any at all because, it's just, Lenny Henry, I would argue, probably still remains one of the first or only experiences a lot of Britons have with a Black comedian. And it's even more sinister when you realize that Lenny Henry is historically an impressionist, and a lot of his material is written by white men from Oxbridge. So, again, it's like, if you think about that era of comedy, alternate comedy, where the rise of like Comic Strip Live, and you had Rick Mayall and French and Saunders and Ben Elton and Joe Brand, and like, this list of all these alternate comedians that have now transcended their initial appearances as like newcomers and rebels, and are now just fully enamored as parts of like British comedy. Their places are cemented. It's like, but Lenny Henry is still like, what about me? And that's a problem. If he, after all this time, after being the figurehead of comic relief, after being in Harry Potter, this guy is still like, but what about me? That's a problem. Like, he shouldn't have to be in this position where he still has to be vocal about opportunities in Britain for Black Britons. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, totally agree. To get onto the entertainment of it, although, as you say, to like go through that prism, so Pointless, you've got to be on, and that's like just one of my favorite shows. I'm obsessed with. Can you talk a bit about going on that show?
Yes, it was very, very fun. I know this is going to sound kind of smug, but nothing fills me with more glee is that walking onto a set where I'm wearing a jacket or a hoodie, and people are like, he's going to be a moron. And then I do really well, and everyone's like, oh my God. But don't worry, it's happened with my family quizzes as well. I've been smashing them, and people have no idea why. Because I've been doing a shitload of trivia, guys. I got trivia apps. I love trivia, doctor. I fucking love it. So Pointless was an amazing experience, and yeah, I gotta say, Richard Osman has been so supportive of my career, man. So any opportunity I get to work with him, and even Alex as well, they're great guys. It was an amazing experience with Shazia Mirza. Apart from, she made a negative comment about Dizzy Rascal, and I was like, you can't say that. I'm gonna have to meet him one day. So yeah, turns out Shazia Mirza was his former maths teacher and said that he wasn't interested in maths and he was a bad student. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because he's a performing artist and a millionaire. So no one gives a fuck about school.
Which is a great message to put out.
Listen, most people who tell kids to stay in school did not finish school. Now, I know it's not the best message, but no, education is invaluable. School kids, not so much. I'm sorry to say that on this Twitch feed, but fuck it. David Beckham did not do a degree. And you know who else didn't finish their degree? Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, Abraham Lincoln, J.D. Rockefeller, Richard Branson.
Yeah.
I don't know what uni Alan Sugar went to. The point is, if going to school predisposed you to get a good job, why the fuck do the teachers work there then?
Yeah. Although I don't think we should use Richard Branson as an ideal for anything right now.
Oh, he's not ideal anything, but what he is rich. So going to school will not guarantee you being in a good state for a good job, because, you know, for a start, a lot of people went to work thinking, oh, cool, I'll be able to drive a cab and run a business. Well, now that we're having driverless cars, not so good. If you're going to go to school, you use school. Do not let school use you. That is my message.
Yeah, and it's just the blanket, oh, the best days of your lives. Oh, what? When I was picked on every day for being a fat git at the time? Yeah, great. It was cracking.
Going to secondary school is like living in Instagram. It's like all cliquey and immature and ignorant. Like, that is social media. The worst part of it represents what high school is, in that the people that are popular because they're good looking. There is no other merit to their popularity. Just like on Instagram, people grow up into small little cliques and they define their identity on those cliques by separating themselves from other people. That's exactly how secondary school works. And then if you say something that's too mean, someone can report you secretly and you get in trouble rather than having to have the actual confrontation with these said people. That is exactly how secondary school works. So if you fucking hate and you're like, oh, I need to take a break from social media, you will also feel the same way about school. So you're absolutely right. Like, people in school, like, you want to go around a bunch of these other fucking crazy people that have the minds of children and the hormones of adults who can't deal with their own self-image, so they project it onto other people. Fuck that shit for a laugh, mate.
And I think it's a kind of good metaphor for a lot of things that, I heard so much when I was at school. I'd say it's like, oh, but they hit me. It's like, yeah, but you're the one making noise. Yeah, because you tend to make noise when you get hit.
Yeah, so you go to school and all of a sudden the normal etiquette and law disappears, because in real law and common law, you have something called like common man. So you're able to defend yourself or at least call for help within a normal capacity. So when they're like, you're the one making noise, what the fuck do you think happens when you get hit? Go and ask the science teacher if you don't understand how fucking nervous systems work, you idiot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome, doctor. I was suspended a few times. So.
I don't know if you can tell us right now about the chocolate chip, because I don't know how far into the tour you got before this shitstorm happened.
I got pretty far, man. Do you know what? It's crazy. The Chocolate Chip is a show about rising racial tensions in the West and what will happen if the complex of black anger isn't addressed. So essentially, if you want to know what's happening in America now, that's what the show was about months before it happened. It was me just trying to tell everyone this is not going to end well. So that's basically what the show's about. But the show's also about, just mental health in general, and that, this idea that we try to contextualize our self-worth based on identity politics is not really helping anybody. So yeah, the show's just about the fact that, like, anyone who thinks black anger is some weird, distinct thing, it's just anger, and it's a valid part of the emotional spectrum. And I think if people really pay attention to their reality in some ways and how they're being treated, they would get angry too. And sometimes anger is good. You know why? Because when you get angry, it's normally when you say, fuck this shit, I'm not going to take it anymore. And so I'm just trying to encourage some critical thought and, some justifiable anger amongst my audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's the amount of media, such as like comedians and like Orange is the New Black did a whole storyline where like Pussy got killed with a knee on her back, I think it was in that example. But it's like, it's people, like, people should be angered, but people shouldn't be shocked after all the examples and after there's so many kind of people who are already talking about it. Just all it is people listening a bit more, and hopefully for a bit longer this time.
I mean, hopefully. Personally, I believe that we're at a stage now. I don't think we can go back when you take into account, like, the fact that this ongoing oppression of people is just causes stress, and that in turn causes people to have a lower immune system and therefore be more susceptible because of their stress and the associated problems with self-medicating of dealing with these problems means that that's why Black people are disproportionately more affected by something like COVID-19. So when you now that we're more susceptible to death because of racial oppression, plus the ongoing racial oppression, then being actively endorsed by a president for whom you are salarizing by you paying him, like all of that comes together is just a perfect shitstorm of like revolution. And I think, what I've learned, because I've attended a protest, I was one of the oldest people there. This is not even about me and my historic angst. And, this is young people who have woken up and been like, I'm a productive member of society as well. There is no way I'm putting up with a modicum of this shit. So I really feel like, yeah, people are being a lot more open to listening and stuff. And there are a lot of cynics, but I believe that in the same way that there were, people forget, there were people who during the Vietnam War and all of the immorality of the Vietnam War, there were people that still supported it for their own interests. And, people forget that, like, even when people were peacefully demonstrating against the war, like the National Guard was shooting people, white and Black students alike, or was shooting white students alike, for them trying to be pacifists and stop a war, which America in the end conceded shouldn't have been waged in the first place. So I think, since the Great War in the West, we've enjoyed some level of relative peace apart from certain groups being oppressed and vilified. But, we just have to we've gotten to a point in time in our history again where, we saw the very gradual rise of fascism over the last couple of years. And we're being reminded that, we have to fight for our freedoms. And sometimes you got to remind people to fuck the fuck off.
I that's what I want to happen, but it's like my only fear is, like, I think the reason why we have the numbers on the side of right more than ever is because we put out good messages over kind of the years, and the messages have got better. Messages still need to improve a lot, but then you get an asshole like Trump in power and the message changes, and like there's kids being born who see that as the message. Like I just worry what that does to us and just to moving forward.
It's a very valid point, man. But like, if you got to look at it, the issue isn't really about Trump. It's about the conditions that allow for a man of that nature to rise to power. And with Donald Trump, it's like, consumerism and capitalism has ruled the day, particularly in the West, over the last 20 years. And we've all kind of bought into this whole idea of consumerism, whether it's through the ubiquitousness of like credit being available, and we've gone from being a economic system of supply and demand to supplying a demand. So before it was like, I need this, and then somebody would provide it. Whereas now, like, well, if you don't have this, you need to have it. And that consumption kind of mentality has gone on for so long that, like, it's not surprising, because Donald Trump, he essentially is the epitome or the personification of capitalism, in that, he doesn't work harder than anybody else, doesn't really have any particular ingenuity politically or economically, as evidenced by the fact that his own businesses have failed before he became a president. His treatment of women, just basically his like he represents all that capitalism is the fact that, that people feel they can patch over their shortcomings by throwing money at it. And I think people that are being brought up, I mean, like I said, this is another reason why I can happily say fuck school, because how are you going to encourage children to have some form of etiquette and empathy when they deal with other children in school, ideas about discipline and, applying yourself, when you've proven on a political level and on a national level that you can be an asshole who doesn't work hard, you don't think hard, you don't care about other people, but because you're white and rich, you can be president. So it's a very worrying message to send. But I'm just confident that, the snake will eat its own proverbial tail, because, Donald Trump is going through what I call a emperor's new clothes syndrome, whereby he's gone from the status of like plutocrat, whereby people, for fear of losing their job or revenue stream, would never oppose him and would be sycophants around him, to becoming a civil servant, where we can now point at him and be like, you're not wearing any clothes and you look stupid. And I think he's going to be permanently scarred from that.
Yeah, I hope so. Like, it just seems like for a long time they got away with. You mentioned capitalism there. I think they use the fact that you can be poor and have certain trappings. Like, if you've got big screen TV and an iPad, like they use those things, I think, to nullify people in poor income brackets. That through credit they can have those few things. But it only lasts for so long. People will only get tricked by that for so long. I like to believe anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, they are tricked because, I guess that's a big part of the trick is that people have learned that having a big TV is indicative of wealth, and they don't realize it's actually pictures that don't move that are worth the most money. But that's always been part of the whole kind of deception, is that like teach people to think that champagne is indicative of wealth instead of owning the vineyard itself. So I think even those things are starting to, even that kind of glossing over of reality is starting to crack as well, and people are starting to realize that even that doesn't kind of make sense. And I think the biggest indicator of that would be the sharp rise in mental health issues and neuroses that people are dealing with over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's the sort of imitation of things. It's like, the 5p noodle springs to my mind. Like when people get 5p noodles, they could afford to feed a family, but they're feeding them shit. And like that's going to lead to health problems, obesity, like we've spoken about already.
Yeah, diabetes. I mean, like I said, it's a vicious cycle. If you grow up poor and you haven't got access to running water, then obviously you're going to have a high fructose and a high sodium diet. So you're going to be a lot more susceptible to COVID, like a lot of African Americans who are deprived of these opportunities through either mass incarceration or through engineered poverty. And then it's not a coincidence that nowadays more people are obese in the developed world than there are starving people. And that's because, for lack of a better expression, doctor, fat people do not protest.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to draw this to a close, I like to ask my guests a bit of advice to try and help me learn and progress as a kind of presenter, human being, whatever you like. But I think and I so wanted to end this on a kind of like more up note, but one thing I want to kind of ask you is I really appreciate in your stand-up that you've said that it's not up to one Black person to speak on the whole behalf of Black community. And I also think it's not the responsibility of the Black community to have to educate the white community. However, as someone who wants to be an ally, how do we do that and ask questions without being annoying and pissing you off, quite frankly?
I think this conversation has been one of the best demonstrations of how you can be an ally, because we are able to have discourse where we suspend prefacing everything we say from a racial perspective. And again, this is part of the media engineering, whereby people have been educated so much to think you cannot talk to a Black person unless you talk about Black stuff. And that isn't the case. So I think anytime you're going to enter in conversations, just anytime you speak to anybody, it's like when guys say, oh, I don't know how to speak to women, like you speak to everyone. And it's the same approach with Black people. If you want to strike up a conversation with a Black person and rapport build, you don't necessarily have to do that from the perspective of color or rack your brain trying to think of the last Black phenomenon, pop culture phenomenon you heard of that you could speak to a Black person about. So it's really just a question of just being like, I would say to people, we can talk about the weather and shit. So for me, it's like this kind of conversation here, we can have a casual conversation. And if it moves on to the subject of racism, and I give you anecdotal experiences or from the perspective, it's just to listen to that and be like, oh, I see, okay, cool. Rather than feel, and it might be in your case, but a lot of people feel when you do muse about racism is that you're directly attacking that particular white person, which is not the case. We're talking about the phenomenon itself, because it's an institution and it's a system. It's not about an individual. Always be open to listening to those ideas and realizing that, no one benefits from having to relay, negative anecdotes or to bemoan their experiences with racism anyway. So it's always for a reason. But my advice to yourself and your listeners would be to realize that there's more to Black people than just their skin. So you can talk to them about anything, and you rapport build the same way. And that's how we'll really reach a state of equality.
Thank you, sir. Before we go, though, sorry, I will actually end on something else. We didn't mention your podcast. Please tell us a bit about that.
Yes. So my podcast is called Dane Baptiste Questions Everything. It's available on Acast and also the Spotify. And essentially, it says on the tin, I'm somebody who always encourages people to be inquisitive and question their reality. And just question anything, man. That's how you know you're a human. It means you're thinking if you're questioning stuff, even including yourself. But it's always good to take reference to that. So we just try to encourage that environment on the podcast. And we have a interesting mix of alumni that we ask those questions to. So we've got everyone from Reggie Yates to Stephen Bush from The New Statesman, to Jamelia, to Trisha Goddard, to Mae Martin, the comedian, Catherine Ryan, so we Georgie Bartlett, who's on the Gadget Show. So it's just the most diverse range of guests asking questions that you wouldn't want to ask them or hadn't had the opportunity to ask them, but just about anything. So anything about anything you want to ask, but we're always ashamed to do so. It's the right podcast for you.
Okay, and where can you find them online as something magically appears at the bottom of the screen?
So you can find them online on Acast if you put in Dane Baptiste Questions Everything. Also available on Spotify. But also go to danebaptiste.co.uk where you can get all of the links to all of my media. I have a YouTube channel and also as well as the podcast, so people can find it all there.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being my guest tonight.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, man. And yeah, my first time on Twitch. I found it very, very nice. So yeah, I'd love to do it again. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dane Baptiste. If you can just hold the line for 1 second, I will say goodbye to the good people, and I'll say goodbye to you afterwards. But for me, for Dane Baptiste, that has been Dr. Squee Show. I've been Dr. Squee, and that was my show. Good night, all.
Peace, everybody.